Good morning, everyone, especially to you, Ma'am Leonora Divina M. Gracia, and I am the first reporter of the Group 1, and our topic is the nature of learning and its scope. So, let's gonna be start. First is what is learning? The term learning has been defined in so many ways. To most, it is simply refers to studying basic subjects in schools from teachers, books, or internet, but learning is actually more than that. So, before we dive into understanding the relevant science behind the learning process, let's ground ourselves first with the different definition of learning that are drawn from various researchers. This definition has three components. The duration of the change is long-term rather than short-term. The locus of the change is the content and structure of knowledge and memory or the behavior of the learner. 3. The cause of change is the learner's experience and the environment rather than fatigue, motivation, drugs, physical condition, or psychological intervention. Number 2. A change in human disposition or capability that persists over a period of time and is not simply ascribable to process of growth. Number 3. Learning is a process that is active process of engaging and manipulating objects, experiences, and conversation in order to build mental models of the world. Learners build knowledge as they explore the world around them, observe and interact with the phenomena, converse and engage with others, and make connections between new ideas and prior understandings. Number 4. Learning is a process that builds on prior knowledge and involves enriching, building on, and changing existing understanding, where one's knowledge base is as folded that supports the construction of all future learning. Number 5. Learning is a process that occurs in a complex social environment and that should not be limited to being examined or perceived as something that happens on an individual level. Instead, it's necessary to think of learning as a social activity involving people, the things they use, the words that they speak, the culture context, and that knowledge is built by members in the activity. Number 6. Learning is a process that is situated in an authentic context, provide learners with the opportunity to engage with specific ideas and concepts on a needed to know or what to know basis. 7. Learning is a process that requires learners' motivation and cognitive engagement to be sustained when learning complex ideas, because considerable mental effort and presence are necessary. At the core, learning is a process that results in a change in knowledge or behavior as a result of experience, understanding what it takes to get the knowledge and out can help optimize learning.
Learning is a process that leads to change, which occurs as a result of experience and increase the potential for improved performance and future learning. The word learning is used to routinely in discussions about teaching in higher education, so it's important to clarify what we are referring when we talk about learning. It is also a relatively permanent change in a person's knowledge or behavior due to experience. Deep and long lasting learning involves understanding, relating ideas, and making connections between prior and new knowledge, independent and critical thinking, and ability to transfer knowledge to new and different contexts. The next one is
Types of learning: motor learning, verbal learning, concept learning, discrimination learning, learning of principles, problem solving, and attitude learning. Number 1. Motor learning. Most of our activities in our day-to-day life refers to motor activities. The individual has to learn them in order to maintain his regular life. For example, walking, running, skating, driving, climbing, and etc. All these activities involve the muscular coordinations. Motor learning is defined as a change in the capability of a person to perform a skill that must be inferred from a relatively permanent improvement in performance as a result of practice or experience. Number two, verbal learning. This type of learning involves the language we speak, the communication device we use, signs, pictures, symbols, words, figures, sounds are the tools used in such activities. We use words for communications. Verbal learning, the process of learning about verbal stimuli and responses, such as letters, digits, nonsense syllables, or words. The methods used include paired associated learning and serial learnings. Number three, concept learning. This is the form of learning which requires higher order mental processes like thinking, reasoning, intelligence, and etc. We learn different concepts from childhood. For example, when we see the dog and attack the term dog, we learn that the word of dog refers to a particular animal. Concept learning involves two processes, viz., abstractions and generalizations. This is learning is very useful in recognizing, identifying things. Concept learning describes the process by which experience allows us to partition objects in the world into classes for the purpose of generalizations, discriminations, and inference. 4. Discrimination learning. Learning to differentiate between stimuli and showing an appropriate response to these stimuli is called discrimination learning. Example, sounds, horns, or different bicycle like bus, car, ambulance, and etc. A conditioning or learning experience in which an individual must learn to make a choice between alternative stimuli, some of which may be highly similar, to facilitate the learning. Typically, one of the stimuli is associated with its reinforcer or goal object, and the other is not. 5. Learning of principles. Individuals learn certain principles related to science, mathematics, grammar, and etc. In order to manage their work effectively, these principles always show the relationship between two or more concepts. Example, formulae, laws, associations, correlations, and etc. Learning of principles are guidelines for the ways in which people learn most effectively. The more these principles are reflected in training, the more effective training is likely to be. Research suggests that they apply equality to domestic and international situations. Problem solving. This is higher order learning process. This learning requires the use of cognitive abilities such as thinking, reasoning, observations, imaginations, generalizations, and etc. This is very useful to overcome difficult problems encountered by the people. For example, a problem-based learning project could involve students pitching ideas and creating their own business plans to solve a societal needs. Students could work independently or in a group to conceptualize, design, and launch their innovative products in front of classmates and community leaders. Number 7. Attitude learning. Attitude is a predisposition which determines and directs our behavior. We develop different attitudes from our childhood about the people, object, and everything we know. Our behavior may be positive or negative, depending upon our attitude. Example, attitude of nurse towards her professions, patients, and etc. Attitude learning is the way we assess and monitor students' approaches to their studies. The discriminators are used by each teachers to assess students' attitudes in their classes, and these attitudes are reported home 3 times a year.
Next, let's talk about learner-centered and its principles.
What is learner centered? Learner centered is a perspective that focuses on the individual learners, their heredity, experiences, perspectives, backgrounds, talents, interests, capacities, and needs with a focus on learning.
This approach views learners as active agents. They bring their own knowledge, past experiences, education, and ideas as this impacts how they take on board new information and learn. Learner centered is also related to the beliefs, characteristics, dispositions, and practices of teachers. Practices primarily created by the teacher. According to Dr. Marilyn Weimer, the 5 characteristics of teaching that make it learner centered are directly engaging students in the hard, messy work of learning. 2. Providing explicit skill instruction. 3. Encouraging students to reflect on what they are learning and how they are learning it. 4. Motivating students by giving them some control over learning processes. And 5. Encouraging instructor-student and student-student collaboration. Now let's proceed to the learner-centered principles. There are 6 learner-centered principles. 1. They pertain to the learner and the learning process. 2. They focus on psychological factors primarily internal and under the control of the learner. 3. They deal with external and contextual factors that interact with the internal factors. 4. They are seen and organized sets of principles, no principles to be viewed in isolation. 5. The principles are classified under cognitive, metacognitive, motivational, affective, developmental, and social, and individual different factors related to learning. 6. These principles apply not only to the learners, but to everybody involved in the educational system, as for example, teachers, administrators, parents, staff, and guidance counselors. When the teachers and their practices function from an understanding of the knowledge and base delineated in the principles, they A. Include learners in decisions about how and what they learn and how that the learning is assessed. B. Value each learner's unique perspectives. C. Respect and accommodate the individual differences in learners' backgrounds, interests, abilities, and experiences. And D. Treat learners as co-creators and partners in the teaching and learning process.
Next is the 5 current learning theories in education. First is the behaviorism. Behaviorism is a pedagogical theory that defines learning as a process of knowledge acquisition that takes place through observation.
G.
How does behaviorism translate to the classroom or corporate training environment? Of course, behaviorism confirms that learning is strengthened through repeated action and therefore having a systematic routine where knowledge is revisited repeatedly will undoubtedly reinforce learning. The most important of behaviorism is the feedback, especially when it is used as a form of positive reinforcement. However, the important note that the behaviorist school of thought is almost entirely dependent on a teacher or instructor, inputs and views of a learner as a passive recipient of information. Example of behaviorism is a student get a small treat if they get 100% on their spelling test. Second is connectivism. Connectivism is focuses on cognitive processes of the mind such as thinking, memory, recall, and problem solving. It is similar to behaviorism. Cognitism is about learning via association. However, the emphasis is placed on internal processing rather than the external environment. Social cognitive theory is a major stand of cognitivism that asserts that observing others, especially one's peers. Connectivism in the classroom is collaborative with problem-solving, discussion-based activities, and peer-to-peer teaching are ideal activity format and enable social interactions that enhance learning. It is very important that information is chunked into groups and discrete segments of knowledge and linked together. Like for example, when a student learns about addition and subtraction, he is able to transfer that knowledge when he uses it to create a budget to help him save money for a new video game. Third is constructivism. Constructivism is a student-centered learning theory that is based on cumulatively building understandings from student prior experiences and knowledge. In other words, to continue the construction analogy, learning becomes a process of constructing new knowledge on the foundation of what is already known. It provides an alternative to teacher-directed curriculum designed by essentially allowing students' experiences to dictate the direction of learning.
Okay.
Whether knowingly or unknowingly, most classroom teachers will be taking a constructivist approach to every lesson when they use engagement hooks that relate back to the world of the students. Like for example, learners pose their own questions and seek answers to their questions via research and direct observation. Fourth is humanism. Humanism approaches learning and education with a growth mindset. It is a school of educational thought that is inherently student-centered. Humanistic education derives many of its values from the intellectual movement of the 17th century. Voltaire is a philosophy believed that humans were born with innate potential. It is also focuses on fostering individual potential and personal growth. It tends to be even more individual focused than constructivism. It is important to note that, unlike other schools of thought, humanists give equal weight to the cognitive or knowledge and affective or feeling domains, which not only impact that how content is conveyed. Example of humanism is democracy, because it gives control of a country to the individual citizens. Last is connectivism. Connectivism is an inherently future-focused learning theory. In contrast to constructivism, which revolves around what a learner already knows. Connectivists is generally believed that expanding knowledge is ultimately more important than taking into account of prior knowledge. Connectivism pinpoints is what a learner needs to know and targets the learning at a relevant time of need. It allows the learners to situate new knowledge with existing schemas of understanding. It also empowers students to make their own learning decisions. And of course, students also aided the process of technology. Note that connectivism mirrors our ever-changing digital landscape in that it is forever changing and never static. Like for example, joining a science forum that discusses methods.
Good day everyone, especially to you Ma'am Leonora. I am Prizelme Sumailo,
and I'm assigned to report about what is pedagogy and andragogy. Pedagogy is the method and practice of teaching, especially as an academic subject or theoretical concept. So it was most commonly understood as the approach to teaching. Based on my research and understanding, pedagogy is a theory and practice of learning, and it explains the process influenced by the social, political, and psychological development of learners. While andragogy is the method and practice of teaching adult learners, adult education. So it refers to a methods and principles used in an adult education. The word comes from the Greek men, meaning man, and agogush, meaning leader of. Therefore, andragogy literally means leading men, whereas pedagogy literally means leading children. There are 8 characteristics of young learners. Number 1, they can learn through talking about themselves, families, and their lives. Number 2, they are curious to learn and discover new concepts on their own. Number 3, they like to use their imagination and to discover things. Number 4, they naturally need to touch, see, hear, and interact to learn. Number 5, because their attention span is limited, they need engaging and entertaining activities in order to not lose interest. Number 6, they like to cooperate and work in groups. Number 7, they need support and encouragement while learning. Number 8, teachers need to work their students individually because they need to be guided. There are 8 characteristics of adolescent learners. Number 1, they are in search for personal identity. Number 2, they are in need of activities that meet their needs and learning expectations. Number 3, they become disrupted when they lose interest in the lesson or feel bored. Number 4, they need help and support from the teacher and to be provided with constructive feedback. Number 5, they can draw upon a variety of resources in the learning environment, including personal experience, the local community, and the internet. Number 6, they need a teacher to build bridges between the syllabus and their world of interests and experiences. Number 7, they can learn abstract issues and do challenging activities. Number 8, their personal initiative and energy are moved into action through meaningful involvement with relevant and current content. There are 8 characteristics of adult learners. Number 1, adults are more disciplined than adolescents. Number 2, they have a clear understanding of their learning objectives. Number 3, they need to be involved in choosing what and how to learn. Number 4, they prefer to rely on themselves and work on their own pace. Number 5, they come to the classroom with a wide range of knowledge, expectation, and experiences. Number 6, they are able to do a wide range of activities. Number 7, adults learn at various ways and in different ways according to their intellectual ability, educational level, personality, and cognitive learning styles. Number 8, they come into the classroom with diverse experiences, opinions, thoughts, and beliefs which need to be respected. Moving forward, we are now at the types of knowledge. Before we discuss the types of knowledge, let us know first what is knowledge. So, knowledge is a facts, information, and skill acquired by a person through experience or education. This means that through the information we acquire from our experience, we gain awareness or knowledge about it. So let us proceed in discussing the types of knowledges. So the first type of knowledge is the a posteriori knowledge. As stated in the material given, a posteriori knowledge is a knowledge that comes from our experience itself. Posteriori is a Latin word of that which come after, meaning that this type of knowledge says that we could only learn when it comes after we had an experience. Number 2, a priori knowledge. So as mentioned in the module, it says that it is the opposite of a posteriori knowledge. So in a priori knowledge can be gained without experiencing something. It can be gained by learning it from facts that already exist. For example, in mathematics, we don't experience it ourselves. We solve it based on fact or formulas already answered using our basic knowledge in mathematics. And number 3, dispersed or distributed knowledge. So in this kind of knowledge, we are using a collaborative approach in order for us to create or achieve our goals. This kind of knowledge is simply put an idea of every person in a room of different expertise that wants to achieve something as one. Number 4 is the domain knowledge, or what they call the expert knowledge. So domain knowledge, it is kind of knowledge where you are really good at or literate enough in certain discipline. But a person domain knowledge is incredibly knowledgeable within their discipline but may just have general knowledge about everything else. So for instance, as we have entered college life, we are starting to create our own expertise or the domain we wanted to be knowledgeable. Number 5, the empirical knowledge. Empirical knowledge can only be gained through our sense. They likely similar to posteriori because it needs experience before achieving the knowledge. The only difference is that in empirical knowledge is an experience but in a form of sense. The next type of knowledge is the encoded knowledge. So this kind of knowledge is a recorded symbolic codes. So how do we recognize it as encoded knowledge? For instance, in mathematics, we use letters and shapes as symbols so that we can recognize the problem given and how it can be solved. Like X or Y, it symbolizes axis or the meridian of mathematical problems. Number 7, the tacit knowledge. So this knowledge, we can say that it is an existing knowledge that you've already gained, but you cannot really remember the whole detail about it, that we find it difficult to explain. Number 8, the explicit knowledge. So this type of knowledge is in contrast with tacit knowledge because in explicit knowledge, it is a knowledge that we can clearly disseminate to people without hesitation if the idea is correct. And lastly, the situated knowledge. In this type of knowledge, to obtain certain knowledge, we must be in a certain situation that might force our minds to create solution from that kind of situation. This kind of knowledge is certainly difficult to understand, especially outside of yourself, because it only emerges when a certain situation came to us. That's all. Thank you.